Hey guys, we're the Jersey Comic Crew, and in today's video we're doing Wonder Woman 1984 full review and breakdown of the movie. Make sure to stay tuned to get all those Easter eggs and some stuff that you might have missed.
Hey guys, Chris and Rob here of the Jersey Comic Crew, and we are talking some Wonder Woman 1984 review. Full spoilers ahead. If you have HBO anywhere in the world, you could watch this movie. So we're going to break down the entire movie for you guys, as well as throw in some Easter eggs, a bunch of connections to the comic books, and as well as our graded thoughts of how well we thought this movie did or did not do. So definitely make sure you stay through to the end, and let's get ready with some Rob's recaps.
That's right, guys. So first thing I wanted to touch about is that big opening scene on Themyscira where we see young Diana taking part in the warrior trials. She's running around and she's demolishing everything. Like, this is a kind of scene that you get more in the first movie instead of the second one, the flashback of how they kind of became who they are. And she falls off the horse. She loses and takes a shortcut down a little like tube, if you will, and tries to win. Now, after she took that shortcut, she's about to win, and Antiope, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, stops her. She says, if you have to cheat to win, you're not ready to win. And that kind of set the whole theme of the show, because we learn later, there's wishes involved, that people getting things magically instead of earning it, which means you're just not meant to get it. So that kind of set the whole theme where they realize they're not for the rest of the movie.
This awesome scene we get in the beginning with this trial is very similar to what Diana goes through in the comics, where but they kind of did it backwards, which is weird. Like, if you look at Wonder Woman 1 and this opening scene, it's almost backwards. I felt like almost the training stuff should have been as her as a kid, and this trial should have been her as older, because in the comic book, she's kind of older. She's like, maybe 21 and 2-ish.
Okay.
And to do that trial, her mother doesn't want her to enter the trial, because if she wins the Wonder Woman armor, and she gets to take Steve Trevor back to man's land. So that's how she leaves Themyscira in the comics.
Okay. We flash forward to today. Diana is in D.C., pretty much the capital of all of the United States. She is alone and cut off. You see everybody's falling in love, and she's just sitting there by herself in this little bistro. Yeah,
and which is also crazy, because like, there's no way Gal Gadot should ever be alone with all these people, and it's like, that's the girl who's by herself and single? Are you crazy? But also, yeah, they put her in this very familiar outfit. She had this like kind of gray suit with this really high white collar like shirt underneath for like her business attire. That's the same exact uniform Linda Carter used to wear.
Oh, really?
In the Wonder Woman TV show, which that show took place in the 80s.
Okay.
So they were able to take a lot of stuff for this movie and kind of, homage that series, because this movie is also an 80s piece as well.
And now when she was alone, I didn't think that, she's alone because she can't find anybody. To me, I was like, she's still hung up on Steve Trevor. Like, they show these little hints and nods, and even in the other movies, we know how strong her attachment is to him. She meets Barbara Minerva, who's, working at the same historical artifact museum, I believe it's the Smithsonian, with Diana.
Yes.
She's very insecure. She's socially awkward. She's looking for friendship and attention. People that she's known the whole time forget her name. Luckily for her, and actually Diana, they both find friendship in each other, right? They both become very fast friends. They start hanging out together, and then the tide starts kicking up a turning when Maxwell Lord, or they call him in the movie, Max Lord, comes to visit, asking for Barbara directly, and Diana senses there's new danger that's about to come to her new best friend.
Most definitely. And yeah, like Barbara, one of the biggest questions was Kristen Wiig in this movie, right? She's mostly a comedian. How are they going to put her in this film? And to me, it was kind of this super villain trope that we've seen numerous times. It was, relatable to Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman in the beginning of Batman Returns, where she's kind of this nobody recluse. Even similar to how Jamie Foxx portrayed Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's kind of this, like, he bumps into people and doesn't really know anybody. A touch of 70s Clark Kent as well, if you will, bumping into people and very awkward. But it's a trope we've seen over and over again. Kristen Wiig obviously plays it very well.
It's also the trope, though, of the awkward best friend. So, like, if you went into this movie blind and you didn't know who that character was, you could have easily just said, "Oh, this is her weird, quirky friend that she's going to meet," right?
Yeah. Totally. And they are friends in the beginning in the comics as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
Barbara Minerva is actually the second Cheetah. She's more of like the modern day Cheetah. So her and Diana are actually friends prior to her becoming the Cheetah later on.
And in the comics, well, in this story, we know that she becomes the cheetah from the Dreamstone, which we're going to get back to. In the comics, doesn't Barbara become the cheetah from like a god's curse? Doesn't like a god intervene and curse her, causing this power instead of a wish being granted?
Absolutely, and it's not so much like a wishing stone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a Greek god either. It's like an ancient tribal god named like Urs Cartaga or something. It's like the
Okay.
curse of Urs Cartaga, and it's specifically the cheetah curse. It's like you get all this power, but almost like the monkey's fist, the legend of the monkey's fist, where like all
Mm.
the finger, every wish a finger goes up, and then when it closes again, you get these wishes, but what do you lose in return? There's always a price to pay,
Well,
but that curse doesn't get lifted.
yeah.
So in the comics,
They make that exact reference to the Dreamstone, that it's like the monkey's paw. There's always a price to pay for the wish that you're granted. Max Lord uses his newfound power very well in this movie, I think. He essentially tricks people to wish for things that he wants, and then he also gets like the price they have to pay. Right? So he's doing a double-edged sword, and he's winning every time. And he uses this to build up his millions and billions, his oil tycoon, and he becomes essentially rich overnight.
yeah, and Max Lord in the comic books has some similarities to what they showed in the movie as far as powers, right? He basically can kind of grant wishes, but not in a genie style. It's more of persuasive, and he can control you and also make you perceive and see things
Yeah,
that
that's cool.
maybe aren't there, kind of akin to what we saw with the Purple Man in Jessica Jones.
Yes.
And that aspect in the comic book does take a toll as well. Usually, like a nosebleed, he gets weak, headachy. He has to rest, almost like kind of like Grogu using his force powers, and he has to rest afterwards. But in this movie, they up the ante with how much it takes a toll on his body, and how he basically grants wishes so he could, kind of like Mephisto-ish in Marvel, where it's like, I'm giving you what you want, and I'm taking like a piece of your actual body to restore myself.
Yeah, so like he pretty much turned the negative effects from the Dreamstone into a positive for him. He grants somebody the wish, but the price that you had to pay essentially goes to him. So like the one guy, the oil baron, he's like, "Oh, you want your land back? Cool. I'm gonna take your security team. They obey me now." So like there's always that tit for tat, but like he got the benefit, which was really smart. And the way he was getting the wishes, it paid homage to the comics because he did it in a very smooth, like businessman style. Like he would walk up to them, talk to them, kind of persuade them to do the wish without using magic forces. That takes us to Diana's wish. She wished that Steve Trevor was back. Steve's soul comes back in a new body, and Diana is taking him around the 80s, showing him all the new stuff that's been happening. That man out of time trope that we've seen in Captain America and other time traveling shows, which it was done well, it was cute, uplifting, showed us the reason why the two fell in love again. And Diana realized, hey, if I want to go after the reason why this happened, we have to get out of bed. We have to see what's going on. The two of them hop into a jet. Steve is flying a new jet. He's as giddy as a schoolgirl. And then Wonder Woman does something crazy. She actually turns the vet invisible. My father turned the whole island invisible. I could try to do it with the plane so we get away from radar. And they do that. They have a lovely moment. I wasn't fond of her turning the plane invisible.
Neither was I.
I thought that was
It wasn't
thrown
explained.
in there just for the fun Easter egg of it. And I was like, all right, you're giving her this much power. At the same time, like she's supposed to be losing all of her power and strength, because we see that in the big climactic battle afterwards, that she actually took a bullet wound. She lets go of her lasso because Steve Trevor's here. She's getting weaker by the minute. So the fact that she was strong enough to make a plane invisible when her last attempt was a cup, it just seemed a little weird. Maybe a small plot hole. Maybe something was off. I just wasn't a fan of that particularly.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I would argue and say it's a big plot hole, because that invisible jet is a staple of Wonder Woman lore in the comics, in that character. It's used, it's been around for 50 plus years as like Gotham is akin to Batman, the invisible jet is akin to Wonder Woman. And I think it was something we were all kind of like hoping and waiting to see in like this cool new way, but kind of giving her this like, Dragon Ball Z aura sphere thing Lucario-esque move where she just turned it invisible in the 80s with radar. It was very like, I don't know, to me it was a right away throwaway cheap thing that
That's
didn't
exactly
get
what I was thinking.
explanation.
In the comics, Chris, how does she get the invisible plane, or how does the plane become invisible? Because that's something I'm sure people at home want to know, this Easter egg, and I definitely want to know.
Yeah, it's actually a piece of technology from Themyscira. And when people think of Themyscira, they think Greek mythology, they think a bunch of, gorgeous Amazon women that are all ridiculously, dangerous. But they also have crazy advanced technology, almost akin to like a Wakanda, right? Like it's a mix of tribal and crazy advancements. So the invisible jet actually comes from Themyscira, and she uses it to take Steve Trevor back almost like secretly from the island in the original storyline.
So I mean, if the writers of the show would have taken it and twisted it a little bit instead of her
Writers
using,
of the movie.
well, it's a show again,
Movie.
right? Yeah. If the writers for this movie took that inspiration a little bit more to heart, I think that throwaway scene would have been fine. If they would have said, hey, I have this piece of technology that I'm trying to learn how to use to turn things invisible that requires me to put my force or my essence into it. And the last time I did it was a cup, and it's just some item, and they use it, then the item gets destroyed afterwards. Like, you can still have that throwaway, and it still make a little bit more sense in the plot, because it's like, oh, she's weaker. She did it because she had the technology. She just learned how to use it or something. I think that might have been better. But moving on, after we see some research done by Barbara and Diana and Steve Trevor, they realize that the stone is a source of all this power, and it has been used throughout histories to tear down civilizations. So they're on their way to try to stop Maxwell Lord while he goes to the White House to make the deal of a century. And then at the White House, we get this great battle between Barbara and Diana. Barbara realizes, hey, Diana's trying to stop this all from happening, which means I lose my confidence, my beauty, my strength. I don't want to lose all this. And
my
Diana's
side piece.
What?
My side piece.
My side. Oh yes, her side pieces. Everybody's loving her now, right?
Yeah, that douchebag who was like mean to her in the beginning with the popped collar was like all over her later on. I was like, I hate this guy every time I saw him.
So after the climactic battle, Diana gets beat bad, and that's because she's vulnerable in this movie, which I did appreciate her being vulnerable in this movie. It actually made me feel like there were stakes of Diana fighting and losing the battle. And that's something that's always hard to do with Diana or Superman and stuff like that. These bigger, larger-than-life characters. They depowered her for love, which was very nice. And she ultimately had to give up her love to save the world, just like she did in the first movie, where Steve sacrificed himself to save her so she could save the world. The wounds are being healed. She's going after Maxwell Lord, and she has this new, beautiful golden armor, which we're going to talk a little bit more about with that Easter egg. And then she's met by Cheetah, who's now full-powered, full fur. They fight back and forth, and it was like a Tarzan fight. She's swinging from the rope. She's swinging from a broken electrical wire. They're fighting back and forth. They get shocked down in the middle, and I was like, "Oh, okay, we're just Tarzaning this up. We're just going balls to the wall, Amazon style."
Yeah. So the Golden Eagle armor is actually from an Elseworlds comic. In the 80s that Alex Ross invented. It was from Elseworlds Kingdom Come, which if you read comics, you know Kingdom Come. And it's basically kind of this armor Diana wears in order to fight godlike beings that's stronger than her own armor. So they brought that out of the comic. They used it here in a little bit of a different way, right? Where it's kind of passed down through generations and you have to win it. It kind of like in the comics where you had to win the Wonder Woman armor. So that was an interesting trope there. And to me, like really quick, Rob, Cheetah made it seem to me that they needed someone to fight, right? Like she couldn't fight Maxwell Lord with her fist because she would have exploded his head.
Exactly.
But they needed Cheetah in this for, some type of third act climactic fight.
Yeah.
Which to me was like give and take. Like I never thought I would see Cheetah live action, which I thought was in that sense awesome.
Cheetah and Wonder Woman dynamic going back and forth the fighting, I liked a lot, and I think it made a lot of sense for this movie. The whole overall plotline and how Barbara was weaved into the story with Maxwell Lord and her falling for him because that's the first guy to show her real attention that she, wanted back, her getting these powers, her losing her humanity, after making the wish on the Dreamstone. It all felt natural and organic. The only thing I didn't like with the Cheetah Wonder Woman arc was the battle scene at the end. It was nowhere near as bad as the third act that we got in the first movie for me. But this one, it felt they were so reliant on the lasso. They were so reliant on the lasso, the whipping of it, the swinging from things like it. It kind of took away from it. It felt like they were trying to shoehorn the lasso in a lot more than they needed to. And I felt like that was one of the overarching things in this movie that I didn't like. I love her using the lasso. I think it's a great tool. I think it's iconic for Wonder Woman. But it felt shoehorned into this movie.
In the movie, I was like, okay, are we using this as the lasso of truth, or is it just Mjolnir? Right? Because she was swinging from it, and I thought, like, obviously the CGI of it was really cool, using it to block bullets. I thought, but like, where are we gonna, like, are we using it to get someone to tell us the truth about something at all, or to kind of help the plot line go forward? I thought they missed a big moment where they could have found out about the past in a cool way by using the lasso to find out, like, how this Dreamstone was starting to degrade the world, instead of kind of having that random shoehorned guy in who was like, yeah, I just so happen to be a descendant of, like, this guy who had a book. And
yeah, because like she used it to show the truth before, right? That she knew, but like she obviously wasn't there for that battle. She got the truth from the armor. So what if she used that? Like the guy told him, and she's like, you know what? Let me do this and wrap it around the book and that guy. And we saw a flashback. That would have been more powerful and more dynamic. I would have liked that.
Yeah, and then obviously there was a big, like, the lasso almost became also like a Spider-Man web, where like it was almost just like flipping. But yeah, like it was an interesting way of doing it. I thought I wanted a little more like true Wonder Woman, like lasso truth. Yeah, use it in battle, definitely. Like, don't take everything out. But when it came to, like, now it's just almost like Thor's hammer. It kind of, I don't know, it diluted it for me a little bit. But anyway.
Yeah, but now we get to the final arc of Maxwell Lord is controlling the world. He uses satellites to touch everybody. It's very important that he touches them so he can make their wish. And he's, getting essentially eternal youth and power. And the whole world is falling into chaos. Diana eventually stops him by somehow getting the lasso. I guess like a snake, and it just slithered around on his foot. And she uses it as a way to talk to the whole world to give up their wishes. And then Max saw that his son Alistair was in danger, and then that made him decide to stop. For me, the whole Alistair, Maxwell Lord's son, and him, their dynamic wasn't as strong as it needed to be. They definitely needed to do that more if that was the reason why he wanted to stop. If his reason to stop him was because he was worried about his kid, we needed some more time between them instead of him just keep pushing him off to the side. Because it kind of showed like he was a deadbeat father that kind of cared, instead of like, oh, he's a father who really cared, but he just had to do these evil means to support. And that didn't hit as well. And her using the lasso to talk through people or to show the truth through Max, I thought that was a little strange because it looks like it wasn't really affecting him, but like kind of bypassing it. I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah, these movies have really troubles with third acts to me, and I actually disagree on the Alistair side. I think they showed enough. I didn't need more Alistair. I didn't need more of the sun trope. I understood it immediately, right? He's trying to be this big tycoon in business. I actually really liked the first like 20 to 25 minutes of this film before the pacing completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was Maxwell Lord, like, seeing that he was basically living in his office that wasn't even open yet, and already losing deals that people had promised him. And
he was a sham, yeah.
Like the fear of just like having nothing while he's trying to be something, and how his kid looks at him. Because in the beginning, it kind of has that similar Barbara trope, right? He's trying to be this good guy for his kid, and then he gets the power, and it's like, see ya, and obviously the message is like you remembering who you are and be careful what you wish for. But as far as the wishes at the end, I think it's just such a hard story plot to get right.
Correct.
If you're going into wishes and everyone could use it, because one, it went from him touching people, he had to touch you.
Yep.
and somehow now he could do like almost like Jim Carrey as the Riddler with the brainwaves.
Well, because his
Batman
words,
Forever.
like he's technically quote unquote touching everybody by being on their monitors, and that was like a loophole, which I didn't have too much of a problem with that aspect of it. But
how do you explain everyone just rescinding their wish? Like, you really have that much faith in people that they're gonna do that?
yeah, so that's another plot hole. Is that like that's a plot hole that we're gonna have to discuss in depth in our next video, where we're gonna talk about all the questions that we have with Wonder Woman. We're going to answer them, and I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions and theories. We're going to answer that in our next video. But the last little bit that we get, obviously all the wishes are rescinded. The world is restoring order. Maxwell Lord meets up with Alistair, and they have a happy ending. We see Cheetah. We never see her actually rescind her wish. So she might still have the powers, just not look like a cheetah, because she looked like a cheetah and get extra powers because of Max's other wish and abilities, not from her original wish. So we'll see what that turns out to be. And then we get a small post-credit scene, which, very nice. The post-credit scene, we see a woman in a blue hooded robe walking down the street. A pole starts to fall over. She catches it one hand and saves it. And then we see it's Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, which was a great homage. And she says, my name is Asteria. Don't worry about it. You'll learn how to do it. It's easy. And in the movie, we learned that Asteria was thought to be dead because she was the last Amazon on Earth who allowed for the other Amazonians to leave. And that kind of sets up for the third movie, which is pretty interesting. But it kind of looked like everybody else got off scot-free. So, I mean, I don't know. But that kind of is the recap of the movie with all the little hidden Easter eggs. Chris, I think it's time for us to give our rating, don't you?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to go first?
I think
we'll do the bad news first and the good news after.
No. I think we need me to go first.
Okay.
And then you could say no. You know what? You're right.
Okay.
Bad news first, good news, and we can end on the good note.
I will say I didn't hate this movie at all. I thought it was kind of similar to the first one. I thought the first one had way more Wonder Woman in it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted more Wonder Woman in this movie because there were certain parts of the action stuff where I looked up and I was like, oh, that's Wonder Woman. Like, that's what I see in the comics. That's what I picture. And they did it perfectly on screen. Some of the fighting shots. But man, that script and plot holes were just so plentiful that, as far as I'm concerned, it's still really rough. And I still don't think they've proven to me they could do a Wonder Woman movie correctly at this point. It's still so convoluted, and there was so much going on that doesn't make sense and everything. But as far as grading for me,
yes,
I would give Wonder Woman 1984 probably a C+.
Okay.
That would be my take.
So, my perspective, a little different from Chris. This movie, yes, it might not be a great Wonder Woman movie, but this movie definitely shows a fantastic Wonder Woman in the world of Themyscira. I enjoyed it, and that, like, this to me, I was like, oh, this is Wonder Woman. They're just having to do weird things. That's how I took it. I thought this movie was a fun, lighthearted superhero movie. Definitely paid homage to the old superhero movies from like the Christopher Reeve era. It had that fun. It tried to give a serious message, but it wasn't too over the top. It was very campy. Definitely had its fill of plot holes and just weird, questionable things that it did. For me, I'm giving it a B. It's definitely very enjoyable, and especially in a time where we needed something fun to watch, I think it was fun. Good, not great. Nope.
Yeah. And very much something that I'm glad. I think WB was smart for putting on HBO Max.
Correct.
Because that's a movie where on HBO Max, I'm like, okay. But if I paid through the teeth for it for a movie theater and popcorn and everything, I would have been a little pissed and probably would have gave it a worse grade.
Last question before we go. I'm just curious, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Is this movie for you better or worse than Shazam?
To me, wait, let me do that over. I said to me. Yeah.
This might not even make it into the thing, depending on how everything sounds. So you're fine.
Okay. I would say I think Shazam is still a little better, even though Shazam had some of those weird quirks where it seemed like young Billy Batson's personality wasn't the same when he turned into Shazam. It just became he was more of a kid as an adult than he was as a kid, which really bothered me. But I would say they're about par. I would say Shazam maybe has a little bit more fun for me, but they were both very campy and lighthearted, which again, you are right. That is definitely something that I think a lot of people enjoyed right now, but we'll see.
Guys, we want to hear your thoughts on Wonder Woman 84 down in the comments below. If there's any Easter eggs we missed, definitely fill us in, and then we could catch you up on that. What did you grade this movie on the school alphabet letter? Is this an A, a B, a C, an F? We want to hear your thoughts.
And guys, thanks so much for watching. Please give us a thumbs up. Really helps the channel out a lot. And if you're brand new, subscribe. Put on notifications. Listen to us more. You don't want to miss anything else, including our next video, where we answer all the WTF questions about Wonder Woman 84, as well as dive into our own personal thoughts and theories of what's next for DC. And guys, thanks so much again for watching. I'm Chris, and that's Rob. We are the Jersey Comic Crew, and we will see you next time.